Hello, welcome back. I'm Chris. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're doing really well. In this video, I'm talking about 7 heavy-hitting fragrances I wish I'd taken on my tropical holiday. Stay tuned. I'm just going to put this into a little bit of context. I recently visited a beautiful tropical island, and for the trip I wanted to take some fragrances that I thought would be appropriate in the high heat. So I took fragrances that you would traditionally associate with being summer fragrances. So a lot of them were fresher, citrusy fragrances. There were a few slightly darker ones, but for the most part there were fragrances that you would normally associate with summer. I ran into a little bit of a problem that many of these fragrances just could not punch through the high humidity. Yes, it was hot, but it was also very, very humid, and I felt that a lot of the fragrances I took just could not perform in the humidity. They weren't projecting, they didn't seem to have any longevity. So I was putting these fragrances on during the daytime sometimes, which was okay, but in the evenings when I wanted to smell myself a little bit more, I wanted to enjoy the fragrance I was wearing, I was finding that I couldn't really smell it. It wasn't just me. I also went on this trip with my brother-in-law Matt, who you may know from some of my earlier videos, and he had the same issues. He'd taken pretty much fresher fragrances and yeah, they just weren't performing. So that just got me thinking about which fragrances I wish I would have taken with me. Heavier hitting fragrances that still are appropriate to wear in heat, but that would punch through that humidity so that I would still have been able to smell them and enjoy them all through the evening. I've come up with 7 fragrances that I wish I'd have taken with me. I think these would have all performed really nicely in the humidity, but these aren't just fragrances to wear in the high heat or in the humidity. They're actually all pretty versatile, and any of these 7 fragrances I could easily wear all year round. So let's get into it. I've got a nice mix here of designer and niche fragrances. We're going to begin with a designer fragrance. This is quite a recent designer fragrance, not the cheapest of fragrances, but I love it nonetheless. I'm first going to talk about Sauvage Elixir from Dior. This is heavier than the other Sauvage fragrances, but I don't think it's too heavy. There's some sandalwood, vetiver and amber bringing that heavy firepower, but then there's some spices providing some energy, and there's a lovely clean aromatic lavender note which really lifts the fragrance and stops it becoming too heavy and just balances everything out really nicely. Whilst this is a fragrance on the heavier side, I still don't think it would have been too heavy to wear in the heat and in the humidity. I think it would have punched through that humidity really nicely without becoming too heavy and too oppressive. When I found out the fragrances I took weren't performing that well in the evenings, I started craving something oody and fruity, and one of my favourite fragrances that fits that description is from Renier perfumes, and it is called Cacique. When I think of this fragrance, I think of a smell that has come from the very depths of the Cambodian jungle. It could have been discovered in some ancient temple, and you'd believe it looking at the beautiful bottle design on this one as well. For me, the ouds used in here come across as sweet, rounded and fruity. There's even some raspberry adding a little bit more fruitiness, but then the fragrance, whilst it's got weight, it's lifted with some pine and neroli, so it's got a little bit of green to it, which is maybe why it makes me think of the depths of a Cambodian jungle. This fragrance, I think, would be absolutely perfect to wear in the evening in a place where the humidity is high. Actually, I think this scent profile, this type of smell, just perfectly matches an exotic, humid evening. We're going back to a designer for the next one, and I surprised myself actually thinking about this fragrance when I was over there in this humid climate, this humid tropical climate, but I really wanted to wear this. I'm talking about Gucci Guilty Absolute, and at the best of times here in the UK, it can be a bit of an extreme choice, a divisive choice, because it's a strong smell. It's very daring and creative for a designer fragrance. This is an extremely woody, leathery fragrance to the point where, particularly in the opening, it has a medicinal quality. And I don't find that off-putting. It is quite sharp and it's different, and I get that some people wouldn't like that. But for me, that rounds out quite quickly. It fades and softens, and what you're left with is this really beautiful, deep, woody fragrance that would work really well in the humid air, but I don't think it would be too much. I really think that the profile of this In fact, you know, if someone told me there was maybe a little bit of a fruity oud used in this, there's a lot of woods. I don't think it really specifies what type of woods are used in this. After the opening, after that initial sort of 20-30 minutes, this would work beautifully. And I would have been able to smell myself. So maybe a bit of an extreme choice, but I think it would have worked well. I would love to go back over there to try this out to see if it works as well as I think it would. But yeah, I think Gucci Guilty Absolute in a humid climate would do all right. If you live somewhere and it's hot and it's humid, a tropical climate, have you worn this? Does it work? Let me know, report back to me. If you love fragrance as much as I do, head over to my online store, luxparfum.co.uk. You'll find my favourite brands, plus brands you can't find anywhere else in the UK. Link is in the description. Next up is one of my favourites from the brand Swedoft. This is Cambodian oud. Again, it's a nice rounded, slightly sweet, fruity oud. There's a few spices in here. This fragrance has been compared to smelling similar along the same lines, the same kind of profile as Tom Ford's oud would, although it's richer, it's deeper, it's a little heavier, it smells more natural. I'm pretty certain that real natural Cambodian oud has been used in this fragrance, whereas with the Tom Ford, real oud hasn't been used. I don't think the Tom Ford would have won the battle with the humidity, but I think Cambodian oud would, because it's stronger, it smells more natural, it's richer. So if you're looking for something that smells a little bit like Tom Ford's oud would, but is bigger and bolder and has more projection and lasts longer, then you won't go far wrong looking at Cambodian oud. And by the way, I do sell this on my website, Luxe Parfum. I will leave a link for you in the description. Another of my favourites, powerhouse designer fragrance, is Tom Ford's Black Orchid Parfum. This is an earthy, woody, fruity, floral fragrance, all things that I think work really well in a tropical climate. This stuff is addictive and sexy, so pleasurable to wear, and I think it projects really well. Performance on this is fantastic. It's a fragrance that is heavy enough to throw its weight around, but not so heavy that it ever becomes annoying or obtrusive. Tom Ford's Black Orchid Parfum. Oh, there's a little bit of rum in this, so that booziness just for me gives it a little more of a masculine edge than the EDP. Really nice stuff. The next fragrance has some heavy-hitting notes of myrrh, leather and smoke, and they're things that you might not think would work well in the heat, but I think this fragrance would work beautifully in the heat, in the humidity. It's a brand that I fairly recently discovered. I'm very impressed with. It's called Equus No. 8 from YeYe Parfums. So it's got these heavier notes, which is why I think it would perform really well in the humidity, but it's got some lighter notes. There's some spices and some rose which lift the fragrance, so it's a really nicely balanced fragrance. Yes, it is a bit on the darker side, but I don't think it's too dark and too heavy. I also get a little bit of a creamy, spicy cola vibe from this, which I really like. I'm so impressed with this brand, I asked them if I could sell them on my website, Luxe Parfum. I like to try and stock fragrances that I really love and new discoveries. Whilst this isn't a new brand, it's quite a new brand to me, and the whole line I really love. I think my favorite from YeYe is the one I've been talking about, Equus No. 8, but honestly, it's a great line. They're not a brand new brand, although they are new to me and they're new to my website, Luxe Parfum. So I will leave a link in the description. If you want to check them out, if you want to see if you think there's anything you might fancy, then click through the link and have a little look. The last fragrance I'm going to talk about is an oud fragrance. In fact, it's called Oud. This one is Oud from Terence Hughes, and Aaron uses two types of natural oud in this fragrance. He is always very vocal about how he sources high quality natural ouds. In this, there is Thai and Burmese. These aren't animalic ouds whatsoever. There's not a hint of skank to be found in this fragrance there. That lovely, sweet, fruity, rounded type of oud that I was craving for while I was away, and that is my favorite type of oud. As far as I'm concerned, this is about as beautiful as oud gets. It's very accessible because it's not the animalic oud. Then a lot of people who maybe don't gravitate towards oud could absolutely wear this. The fruitiness is further accentuated with the use of raspberry and date, so it's got a beautiful profile. I love wearing this fragrance. This would have worked brilliantly in the humidity. If I ever go anywhere as humid as where I went, I'm definitely going to be bringing this one with me because it would just be perfect. Also, this is beast mode and it's sexy as hell. So if you like beast mode sexiness, then try Aaron Terence Hughes' Oud. It's a belter. Here we are, 7 heavy hitting fragrances that I think would have worked really well on my tropical humid holiday. If you've got fragrances that you think would work well in the humidity, in the really high humidity, then let me know. If there's any I haven't mentioned here, I would love to hear from you, because I would like suggestions for if I'm ever in that situation again. So I hope you like this video. Let me know what you think of my choice of fragrances. Again, just to stress, these are just my choices. They may not suit everyone, but these are the kind of fragrances that I was wishing I'd had with me on that holiday. All right, if you liked the video, if you found it useful, hit the like, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you do all that, I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.